Hello, and welcome to ZzScience. Wherever and whenever you're listening from, I hope you're doing well. Take a moment to get comfortable. There's nothing you need to focus on, nothing you need to stay awake for. Just let your body relax and let your mind slow down. If you feel like it, you can tell me in the comments where you're listening from, and if there's a science topic you'd like to gently fall asleep to, I'd love to hear it. For now, let's slow things down and begin. A whale does not fall asleep the way you do. It cannot close its eyes and drift away into stillness. It cannot stop breathing. It cannot let go completely. A whale must remain partly awake, always, or it will drown. This is not a metaphor. This is the physical reality of being a whale. The ocean does not forgive unconsciousness. The ocean does not wait. A whale breathes air, just as you do, but it breathes consciously. Every breath is a decision. Every rise to the surface is an act of will. There is no automatic rhythm that continues while the mind fades. There is no reflex that keeps the lungs filling while the brain rests. A whale must choose to breathe, again and again, for its entire life. And so, a whale has learned to rest in a way that lets half of its mind sleep, while the other half remains awake. This is called unihemispheric sleep. One hemisphere of the brain enters a state of rest. The other stays alert. One eye closes. The other remains open, watching the water, the light, the movement around it. The whale continues to swim slowly, or drift, or float vertically in the water column, but it is not fully awake, and it is not fully asleep. It exists in a state between. This is not the same as being tired and half aware. This is not the same as dozing off while sitting upright. This is a biological structure. This is a division of consciousness that allows survival. The resting hemisphere shows slow wave sleep patterns. The electrical activity quiets. The neurons settle into slower rhythms. The active hemisphere shows waking patterns. The neurons fire in the faster, more irregular rhythms of awareness. The whale is asleep and awake at the same time, not as a paradox, but as a system. When you sleep, your body takes over. Your breathing continues without thought. Your heart beats without instruction. Your body handles the basics while your mind retreats. A whale cannot afford this. A whale must surface. It must decide when to rise. It must decide when to inhale. And because of this, a whale never fully lets go. It rests one half at a time. After some period, minutes or hours depending on the species and the situation, the hemispheres switch. The resting side wakes. The waking side sleeps. The whale continues. Imagine breathing only when you remember to. Imagine that forgetting, even for a few minutes, would mean suffocation. Imagine that every night, instead of sinking into unconsciousness, you had to remain partly aware, monitoring your body, keeping it alive, never fully trusting the dark. This is what it means to be a whale. But the whale does not experience this as hardship. The whale has no memory of sleeping differently. This is the only rest it has ever known. There is no longing for deeper sleep, no exhaustion from constant vigilance. The whale's brain is built for this. The whale's body expects this. This is simply how rest works when you are a mammal in the ocean. The ocean is not a forgiving place for air breathers. Millions of years ago, the ancestors of whales lived on land. They walked. They breathed automatically. They slept the way you sleep now, fully and completely, both hemispheres resting together. But they returned to the water. They adapted. Their bodies changed. Their limbs became flippers. Their nostrils migrated to the tops of their heads, becoming blowholes. Their lungs became larger, more efficient, and their brains learned to divide. Not all whales rest the same way. Sperm whales, the deep divers, sometimes rest vertically in the water. They hang motionless, nose up or nose down, suspended in the quiet of the ocean. They do not move. They do not swim. They simply float, drifting slightly with the current, completely still for minutes at a time. This vertical resting has been observed by researchers, filmed by underwater cameras. The whales look like enormous statues hanging in blue space, barely breathing. And even then, they are not fully asleep. Even then, one hemisphere remains active, monitoring depth, orientation, oxygen. Other whales rest horizontally, just below the surface. They drift slowly, rising every few minutes to breathe. The movement is gentle. The breathing is quiet. There is no rush, no urgency. The whale rises, exhales, inhales, and sinks back down, over and over, in a rhythm that looks almost meditative. But the whale is not meditating. The whale is resting. One half of its brain is in slow wave sleep. The other half is counting time, measuring oxygen, keeping the body aligned with the surface. Some whales rest while swimming. They continue moving forward, but slowly, far slower than when they are active. The tail moves in slow, steady beats. The body glides. The whale follows a straight path, or a wide, gentle curve. The swimming is automatic in the way that your heart beats automatically, but it is not unconscious. The hemisphere that is awake keeps the body moving, keeps the whale oriented, keeps it from sinking too deep or surfacing too often. The whale rests and moves at the same time. The division of consciousness is not perfect. The resting hemisphere does not shut down entirely. It remains capable of responding to danger. If something startles the whale, both hemispheres can activate quickly. If a predator approaches, if a boat comes too close, if the water changes in a way that signals risk, the resting half wakes. The whale responds, the whale moves. But if nothing threatens, if the water remains calm and dark and quiet, the resting hemisphere stays in its slow rhythms, and the whale continues its half-sleep. This is not multitasking. This is not partial attention. This is two halves of the brain doing genuinely different things. One is resting, the other is not. The whale is not aware of this division, in the way you might be aware of trying to think about two things at once. The whale simply is. The resting hemisphere rests. The waking hemisphere watches. There is no conflict, no effort to maintain the balance. This is structure, not strategy. Researchers have measured this. They have placed electrodes on the heads of smaller cetaceans, dolphins and porpoises, relatives of whales, and recorded the electrical activity in each hemisphere. The readings are clear. One side shows the slow, high-amplitude waves of deep sleep. The other shows the faster, lower-amplitude waves of waking. The two patterns exist simultaneously, in the same animal, in the same moment. And then, after a period of time, the patterns reverse. The sleeping hemisphere wakes. The waking hemisphere sleeps. The animal continues. In whales, direct measurement is more difficult. Whales are large, and they are deep, and they do not cooperate with laboratory equipment. But the behavior suggests the same pattern. The slow swimming, the drifting, the closed eye, the continued breathing. The pattern of rest and alertness that has been observed across species of cetaceans. The assumption, based on anatomy and behavior and the close evolutionary relationship between whales and smaller cetaceans, is that whales rest the same way, one hemisphere at a time, always partly awake. The eye that stays open is not just open, it is watching. The hemisphere that remains awake processes what the eye sees. The whale monitors light levels, the shapes of other whales nearby, the distance to the surface. The open eye does not see with the sharpness of full waking vision. The processing is slower, less detailed, but it is not blind. The whale is aware of its surroundings in a low, steady way, enough to react if needed, enough to avoid danger, enough to keep breathing. The closed eye is not just closed, it belongs to the resting hemisphere, the hemisphere that has entered slow wave sleep. The visual cortex on that side has quieted. The neurons that process light and shape and movement have slowed their firing. The eye remains physically capable of seeing, but the brain is not paying attention. The eye stays closed, or half closed, because there is no reason to open it. The resting hemisphere is not watching, it is resting. A whale does not dream, or if it does, we have no way of knowing. Dreaming, as humans experience it, occurs during REM sleep, a stage of sleep where the brain becomes highly active, almost as active as when awake, but the body is paralyzed. REM sleep shows specific electrical patterns. The eyes move rapidly beneath closed lids. The muscles twitch. Humans spend a significant portion of sleep in REM, cycling into it several times each night. But in whales, REM sleep has not been clearly observed. Researchers have not recorded the electrical patterns of REM in whale brains. The behavior of resting whales does not show signs of REM. The eyes do not move rapidly. The body does not twitch. The whale remains still or moves slowly and smoothly. Some scientists believe that whales do not experience REM sleep at all, or experience it only in very short, infrequent bursts. The reasons for this are related to the same constraints that require uni-hemispheric sleep. REM sleep in humans involves muscle paralysis, which prevents us from acting out our dreams. But muscle paralysis in a whale would be dangerous. A paralyzed whale cannot swim. A paralyzed whale cannot surface. A paralyzed whale would sink or drift, unable to breathe. And so, the theory goes, whales have lost REM sleep, or minimized it, as part of the same adaptation that divided their sleep between hemispheres. If whales do not dream, or dream only rarely, this might seem like a loss. But the whale does not know what it is missing. The whale's rest serves its purpose. The brain recovers. The body conserves energy. The whale remains safe. Whether or not there are dreams, the whale wakes or half wakes and continues living. A whale's breathing is a conscious act, always. You do not think about breathing. Your brainstem handles it. The medulla oblongata sends signals to your diaphragm, telling it to contract and relax, over and over, without your awareness. You can choose to hold your breath, or to breathe faster, or to breathe more deeply. But if you do nothing, your body continues breathing on its own. A whale does not have this. A whale's breathing is controlled by higher brain structures, the cerebral cortex, the parts of the brain that handle conscious thought and decision. Every breath is voluntary. Every breath requires a signal from the brain. And because of this, a whale can never let both hemispheres sleep at the same time. One must always remain awake, always sending the signal to breathe. The blowhole is a nostril, or two nostrils, depending on the species. Toothed whales, like sperm whales and orcas, have a single blowhole. Baleen whales, like humpbacks and blue whales, have two. The blowhole sits on top of the whale's head, positioned so that when the whale surfaces, even just barely breaking the surface, the blowhole clears the water and the whale can breathe. The blowhole is closed by default. Muscles keep it sealed. Water pressure keeps it sealed. When the whale is underwater, the blowhole does not leak. No water enters the lungs. The whale must consciously open the blowhole to breathe. It surfaces. It relaxes the muscles. The blowhole opens. The whale exhales, forcefully, expelling the old air in a burst that creates the characteristic spout, the cloud of mist that rises above the water. Then the whale inhales, quickly, filling its lungs with fresh air. Then the blowhole closes again. The whale dives. A whale's lungs are large, but not disproportionately so. A whale does not carry enormously more air than you would expect for an animal of its size. What a whale does carry is more efficient lungs. A whale can exchange a much larger percentage of the air in its lungs with each breath. Humans exchange only about 15% of lung volume with a normal breath. A whale can exchange 80 or 90%. The whale empties its lungs almost completely, then refills them almost completely. This means that each breath delivers far more oxygen and removes far more carbon dioxide than a human breath. The whale does not need to breathe as often. But when it does breathe, it must be conscious. It must surface. It must open the blowhole. It must choose. And so the whale rests, but always partly awake, always monitoring the need to breathe. The hemisphere that is active tracks oxygen levels, not consciously in the way you might think about being out of breath, but through signals from the body, from chemoreceptors that measure carbon dioxide in the blood, from the slow build of pressure in the lungs. The whale feels the need to breathe in the way you might feel the need to blink, a background awareness that rises until it must be addressed. The whale surfaces. The whale breathes. The need fades. The whale sinks back down or continues drifting, and the cycle begins again. The ocean is dark at depth. Light fades quickly as you descend. In the clearest tropical waters, sunlight penetrates to perhaps 200 meters. Below that, the water is dim. Below 600 meters, the water is completely black. No sunlight reaches the deep ocean. There is only darkness and cold and pressure. But many whales dive deep. Sperm whales hunt in the abyss, diving to 1,000 meters, 2,000 meters, sometimes deeper, chasing squid through the black. These dives last for 40 minutes, an hour, sometimes longer. The whale holds its breath the entire time. The whale hunts. The whale navigates. The whale returns to the surface, breathes for a few minutes, and dives again. But even sperm whales must rest. Even deep divers need sleep. And when they rest, they do not dive. They stay near the surface, or in the upper few hundred meters, where the water is lighter, where the surface is close. They rest vertically, hanging motionless, or they rest horizontally, drifting slowly. They do not hunt. They do not echolocate with the intensity of an active hunt. They simply rest, one hemisphere at a time, and breathe. The darkness of the deep ocean is not a barrier to whales. Whales navigate by sound. They echolocate, producing clicks that travel through the water, bounce off objects, and return as echoes. The whale's brain processes these echoes, building a picture of the world made of sound rather than light. The whale knows where the seafloor is, where other whales are, where prey is, all through sound. In the deep ocean, echolocation is more useful than vision. Vision requires light, echolocation requires only sound, and the ocean is full of sound. But during rest, the whale echolocates less. The clicks slow, the intensity decreases. The whale is not hunting, not navigating complex terrain. The whale is resting. The hemisphere that is awake maintains a low level of awareness, listening to the sounds of the ocean, producing occasional clicks to check orientation, to measure distance to the surface, to confirm that nothing dangerous is approaching. But the whale is not actively mapping its environment. The whale is conserving energy. The whale is allowing the resting hemisphere to recover. Sound travels far in water, much farther than in air. A whale's call can travel for tens of kilometers, sometimes hundreds of kilometers, depending on the frequency and the conditions of the water. Low-frequency sounds travel farthest. The songs of blue whales and fin whales, the low moans that rumble through the ocean, can be detected across entire ocean basins. Whales live in a world of sound. They communicate over vast distances. They hear each other across miles of empty water. And so, even when resting, a whale is never truly alone. The ocean carries the sounds of other whales. The whale hears them, even in half-sleep, even with only one hemisphere awake. A mother whale and her calf rest differently than a solitary whale. The calf is small, still learning, still vulnerable. The calf cannot hold its breath as long as an adult. The calf must surface more often. The calf tires more easily. And so the mother adjusts her rest to match the calf's needs. She rests when the calf rests. She surfaces when the calf surfaces. She stays close, always within a few body lengths, close enough to respond if the calf struggles, close enough to protect. The calf rests pressed against the mother's side, or just beneath her, or just behind her. The calf matches the mother's slow swimming, or drifts with her in the water. The calf breathes when the mother breathes, or shortly after. The two rise and fall together, in a rhythm that looks coordinated, almost synchronized. The mother's hemisphere that is awake monitors not only her own body, but the calf's as well. She is aware of the calf's position, the calf's breathing, the calf's movements. If the calf drifts too far, the mother adjusts. If the calf struggles to surface, the mother assists, positioning her body beneath the calf, lifting it gently toward the air. This is not conscious parenting in the way humans think of it. The mother is not thinking about childcare. But the mother's brain, the hemisphere that is awake, processes the calf's presence as part of the environment, as something to monitor, as something that requires response. The bond between mother and calf is strong, built into the structure of the mother's awareness. The mother cannot rest deeply when the calf is young. The mother cannot let both hemispheres sleep, but she also cannot let her attention drift entirely away from the calf. She rests, but lightly, always ready. The calf also practices unihemispheric sleep, even from birth. The calf is born knowing how to divide its rest. The calf's brain is structured for this, just as the mother's is. The calf does not need to learn how to sleep with one hemisphere at a time. The calf simply does it from the first hours of life. The calf surfaces, breathes, and sinks back down, one eye open, one eye closed, one half of the brain resting while the other watches the mother. As the calf grows, it surfaces less often. Its lungs grow larger, its muscles grow stronger. its breath hold capacity increases. The calf begins to dive deeper, following the mother, learning to hunt, learning to navigate. But the pattern of rest does not change. The calf, even as it matures, continues to rest one hemisphere at a time. This is not a phase of development. This is permanent. This is the structure of being a whale. Groups of whales called pods rest together in some species. Orcas, which are technically large dolphins, rest in tight groups, floating at the surface, barely moving. The pod members stay close, touching or nearly touching, breathing in a loose coordination. Some members of the pod rest more deeply than others. Some keep one eye open, watching the surroundings, alert for threats. The pod shares the burden of vigilance. No single animal must stay fully alert. But together, the pod maintains awareness. Together, the pod remains safe. In other species, whales rest more solitarily. Humpback whales often rest alone, drifting at the surface or hanging motionless in the water column. Blue whales rest alone, their enormous bodies suspended in the blue, moving so slowly they seem frozen. Solitary rest does not mean isolation. The whale can still hear other whales. The whale is still part of the acoustic landscape of the ocean. But the whale does not coordinate its rest with others. The whale rests on its own schedule, in its own way. The length of rest periods varies. Some whales rest for only a few minutes at a time, then resume activity. Some rest for hours. The amount of rest a whale needs depends on many factors: the species, the age, the level of recent activity, the availability of food, the presence of threats. A whale that has been hunting actively, diving repeatedly, chasing prey through the water, needs more rest than a whale that has been traveling slowly, conserving energy. A whale in a rich feeding area, surrounded by food, may rest less, prioritizing feeding over rest. A whale in an area with many boats, much noise, constant disturbance, may rest poorly, interrupted frequently, never settling into deep rest. Researchers have tried to measure how much whales sleep, but the measurements are difficult. You cannot ask a whale if it is tired. You cannot attach sensors that measure brain waves without disturbing the whale. What researchers can do is observe behavior. They watch whales from boats, from drones, from underwater cameras. They note when a whale is moving slowly, when it is floating, when one eye is closed. They record the duration of these periods. They estimate rest time based on behavior. The estimates vary widely. Some species seem to rest for only a few hours per day. Some seem to rest longer. But these are estimates based on observation, not direct measurement. The true amount of rest a whale gets, measured in brain activity, remains uncertain. What is certain is that whales rest differently than land mammals. Land mammals, including humans, cycle through stages of sleep. Light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep, back to light sleep, over and over through the night. Each cycle lasts about 90 minutes in humans. The brain moves through these stages in a predictable pattern. But whales do not cycle in the same way. Whales enter slow-wave sleep in one hemisphere, stay there for a period, then switch hemispheres. There is no clear cycling through stages. There is only the division, the switch, and the continuation. The switch between hemispheres is not instant. There is a transition period, lasting minutes, where the sleeping hemisphere begins to wake and the waking hemisphere begins to slow. The electrical activity shifts gradually. The whale continues breathing, continues swimming or drifting through the transition. The whale does not lose awareness during the switch. One hemisphere is always sufficiently awake to maintain basic functions. The transition is smooth, practiced, automatic in the way that a well-worn routine becomes automatic. Whales do not yawn. At least, yawning has not been observed in whales in the way it is observed in humans and other mammals. Yawning is associated with transitions between sleep and waking, with tiredness, with the need to stretch and reset. But whales do not have clear transitions between sleep and waking. Whales are always in between. And so yawning, if it exists in whales, does not serve the same purpose. The whale does not need to signal tiredness. The whale does not need to wake itself up. The whale is already partly awake, always. The ocean's surface is not always calm. Waves rise and fall. Wind churns the water. Storms create swells that travel for hundreds of miles. In rough seas, a whale resting at the surface must work harder to maintain position. The whale must adjust its buoyancy, its angle, the slow movements of its tail, to avoid being pushed too far down or lifted too far up by the waves. The hemisphere that is awake monitors these adjustments constantly. The whale does not fight the waves directly. The whale moves with them, rising and falling, but staying within a range that allows easy breathing, easy surfacing. In calm seas, resting is easier. The whale can float almost motionless, letting the water support its weight. The whale's body is dense, but not so dense that it sinks rapidly. The whale's blubber, the thick layer of fat beneath the skin, provides buoyancy. The whale's lungs, when filled with air, provide buoyancy. The whale can control its depth by controlling how much air is in its lungs, by adjusting its body angle, by making small movements with its flippers or tail. A whale at neutral buoyancy, with just the right amount of air in its lungs, can hang in the water without effort, suspended, perfectly balanced. But neutral buoyancy is not always desirable. A whale too close to the surface risks being seen by predators. A whale too deep risks using too much oxygen before it can surface again. The whale adjusts constantly, finding the balance between safety and efficiency, between rest and alertness. Pressure increases with depth. For every 10 meters of depth, the pressure increases by about 1 atmosphere. At 100 meters, the pressure is 10 atmospheres, 10 times the pressure at the surface. At 1,000 meters, the pressure is 100 atmospheres. This pressure compresses the whale's lungs. It compresses the air spaces in the whale's body. But whales are built to handle this. The whale's lungs collapse under pressure, pushing air into the windpipe and nasal passages, spaces reinforced with cartilage that do not collapse. This prevents nitrogen from dissolving into the whale's blood under pressure, prevents the formation of gas bubbles that cause decompression sickness, the bends, in human divers. When a whale dives deep and then surfaces, it does not suffer from the bends. The whale's body manages pressure changes smoothly. The whale does not need to ascend slowly, pausing at intervals to allow gases to equalize. The whale simply surfaces, rapidly, exhales, inhales, and dives again. This is possible because the whale's lungs collapse, because the air is pushed into rigid spaces where it cannot dissolve into the blood. The whale is not holding a large volume of air under pressure deep in its lungs. The whale is holding a small volume of air in a safe space. And so the whale can dive and surface without injury, over and over, for its entire life. But even with these adaptations, deep diving is costly. It uses energy. It uses oxygen. And so, when a whale rests, it does not dive deep. It stays shallow. It conserves oxygen. It allows its body to recover from the exertion of deep dives. The whale rests near the surface, breathing freely, one hemisphere at a time. The temperature of the ocean varies. Near the poles, the water is cold, just above freezing. In the tropics, the surface water can be warm, 25 or 30 degrees Celsius. Whales migrate between these extremes, following food, following breeding grounds. Some whales feed in cold, productive polar waters, where upwelling brings nutrients to the surface, where krill and fish are abundant. These same whales travel to warm tropical waters to give birth, to nurse calves in water that does not drain heat from small bodies as quickly as cold water would. In cold water, a whale's body works to conserve heat. Blubber layer insulates. The blood vessels in the flippers and tail are arranged in countercurrent heat exchangers, where warm arterial blood flowing out heats cold venous blood flowing back, minimizing heat loss. The whale's large body, with a low surface area to volume ratio, retains heat more easily than a small body would. But still, the whale must generate heat through metabolism, through the burning of stored fat, through the constant work of swimming and diving. In warm water, the whale's body must avoid overheating. Whales do not sweat. Whales do not pant. Whales cool themselves by increasing blood flow to the flippers and tail, allowing heat to radiate into the water. A resting whale with lower metabolic activity generates less heat and needs less cooling. But a whale that has been active, hunting, traveling, playing, generates significant heat and must cool before resting. The whale surfaces, slows its movements, allows the blood to flow to the extremities, allows the heat to leave the body. Then the whale rests. The whale's heart beats slowly, slower than you would expect for an animal of its size, slower than your heart beats. A whale's resting heart rate can be as low as 4 or 5 beats per minute. When diving, the heart rate slows even further, to 2 or 3 beats per minute, conserving oxygen. Blood flow is redirected away from muscles and non-essential organs, focused on the brain and heart, the organs that must continue functioning. This is called the dive response. Humans have a mild version of the same response. When you hold your breath underwater, your heart rate slows slightly. In whales, the response is extreme. But when resting near the surface, breathing regularly, the whale's heart rate is low but steady. The hemisphere that is awake monitors the heart, monitors the oxygen levels, monitors the body's needs. The whale breathes when necessary. The heart beats at a rhythm that matches the whale's low level of activity. There is no rush. There is no urgency. The whale's entire physiology is tuned to slow, steady function. A whale's blood carries oxygen differently than yours does. Whale blood has more hemoglobin, the protein in red blood cells that binds oxygen. Whale muscles have more myoglobin, a similar protein that stores oxygen in muscle tissue. A whale's body can store large amounts of oxygen in the blood, in the muscles, even in the spleen, which contracts during a dive to release stored red blood cells into circulation. This stored oxygen allows the whale to hold its breath for long periods. This stored oxygen allows the whale to rest between breaths, not frantically surfacing every few seconds, but rising calmly, breathing calmly, and sinking back down to rest. The whale does not think about any of this. The whale's body handles oxygen storage, heart rate, blood flow, all of it automatically, controlled by the hemisphere that is awake, but not consciously. The whale is aware of the need to breathe. The whale is aware of the surface. But the whale is not aware of hemoglobin or myoglobin or the dive response. The whale simply lives. The whale simply rests. The systems work, and the whale continues. Some whales travel enormous distances. Grey whales migrate from feeding grounds in the Arctic to breeding lagoons in Baja California, a round trip of 20,000 kilometers, one of the longest migrations of any mammal. Humpback whales migrate from Antarctic feeding grounds to tropical breeding waters, crossing entire ocean basins. These migrations take months. The whales swim steadily, day after day, covering 100 kilometers or more each day. During migration, whales must rest. But they cannot stop. They cannot linger. They must continue moving, driven by the need to reach feeding grounds before the food disappears, driven by the need to reach breeding grounds at the right time. And so the whales rest while swimming. They slow their pace. They swim in straight lines or gentle curves, not stopping, not deviating. One hemisphere rests. The other keeps the body moving, keeps the whale on course. After a period, the hemispheres switch. The whale continues. Day after day, week after week, the whale swims and rests and swims, across thousands of kilometers of open ocean. Navigating across such distances requires more than memory. The whale cannot see the destination from the starting point. The whale cannot follow landmarks. The ocean, to human eyes, looks the same in all directions. But whales navigate by sensing the Earth's magnetic field. They have magnetite crystals in their brains, tiny structures that align with magnetic fields. The whale senses the direction of the magnetic field. The whale senses the intensity of the field. These cues provide a map. The whale knows, not consciously, but through the structure of its senses, where it is and where it needs to go. During rest, the hemisphere that is awake continues to monitor these cues. The whale does not lose its way. The whale does not drift off course. The resting hemisphere is offline, but the waking hemisphere maintains direction. The whale continues migrating even while half asleep. Food is scarce during migration. The whales are traveling from one rich feeding area to another, but the journey between is often through water with little food. Baleen whales, which filter feed on krill and small fish, find almost nothing to eat in the open ocean between feeding grounds. These whales fast during migration, living off stored fat. A large whale can carry tons of blubber. This blubber provides energy for swimming, for maintaining body temperature, for producing milk if the whale is a mother nursing a calf. The whale loses weight during migration. The whale arrives at the destination leaner, but alive. Fasting affects rest. A whale with plenty of stored energy can rest more easily. A whale that is depleting its reserves, that is losing weight, that is approaching the limits of what its body can sustain, may rest less deeply, may need to conserve energy even during rest. The whale's metabolism slows. The whale's movements slow. The whale rests, but lightly, always balancing the need for rest against the need to keep moving, to keep migrating, to reach the destination before the fat runs out. Whales are not the only animals that use unihemispheric sleep. Dolphins and porpoises, close relatives, rest the same way. So do some seals, though seals can also sleep on land, where they can afford to shut down both hemispheres. Some birds use unihemispheric sleep, particularly migratory birds that fly for days without landing. These birds rest one hemisphere at a time while continuing to fly, gliding on air currents, maintaining altitude, never stopping. The advantage is clear. Rest without losing mobility. Rest without becoming vulnerable. But unihemispheric sleep is rare. Most mammals sleep with both hemispheres. Most mammals can afford to become unconscious because they sleep in safe places. They sleep in burrows, in dens, in nests, in beds. They sleep on solid ground where they will not drown if they stop breathing. They sleep surrounded by group members who share the burden of vigilance. Most mammals do not need to divide their consciousness. Most mammals can let go completely. Whales cannot. The ocean does not allow it. The ocean does not provide safe places to sleep. The ocean is three-dimensional. A whale at the surface is visible to predators. A whale too deep risks drowning if it cannot surface in time. A whale must stay in motion, or at least stay aware, to avoid sinking, to avoid drifting into danger. And so, the whale's brain adapted. The whale learned to rest one half at a time. The whale learned to never fully let go. This adaptation is ancient. The ancestors of modern whales, the early cetaceans that left land and entered the ocean 50 million years ago, would have faced the same problem. They breathed air. They needed to surface. They could not afford to sleep deeply. And so, over millions of years, the brain changed. The hemispheres learned to function independently. The whale's rest became divided, became a system that allowed survival in the water. The evolution of this system is not fully understood. Brain structures do not fossilize well. We cannot examine the brain of an ancient whale, but we can infer from the structure of modern whale brains, from the behavior of modern whales, from the similarities between whales and dolphins and other cetaceans, that unihemispheric sleep is an old adaptation. Something that evolved early in the history of whales, something that has been refined over millions of years. The whale's brain is large. A sperm whale's brain is the largest of any animal, weighing about 8 kilograms. A human brain weighs about 1.4 kilograms. The sperm whale's brain is not just larger in absolute terms. It is also highly folded, with a complex cortex, with many regions dedicated to processing sound, to social interaction, to memory. The whale's brain is capable of sophisticated thought, but despite this sophistication, the brain is divided. The hemispheres, while connected, can operate independently. This independence allows rest. This independence allows survival. The corpus callosum, the bundle of nerve fibers that connects the two hemispheres in mammalian brains, exists in whales. Information can pass between hemispheres. The hemispheres are not isolated, but during unihemispheric sleep, the flow of information slows. The resting hemisphere reduces its input. The waking hemisphere operates more independently, relying on its own processing, its own memory, its own awareness. The connection remains, but the activity differs. What does it feel like to be a whale at rest? We cannot know. We cannot experience what the whale experiences, but we can imagine, cautiously, based on what we know. One side of the whale's body feels more relaxed. One eye sees the world in dim, low detail. The other eye is closed, seeing nothing, or seeing only the faint glow of light through the eyelid. The whale's awareness is present, but narrow. The whale is not thinking in the way you think when fully awake. The whale is not planning, not worrying, not anticipating. The whale is simply monitoring. The water around it, the light above, the weight of its body, the slow approach of the need to breathe. The whale does not count time. The whale does not think about how long it has been resting, or how long until it must become active again. The whale exists in the present. The resting hemisphere is quiet. The waking hemisphere is attentive, but only to what matters now. The surface, the oxygen, the presence of others. The whale does not remember the past in vivid detail while resting. The whale does not plan the future. The whale is simply here, in the water, half asleep. When the hemispheres switch, there is a moment of transition. The resting hemisphere begins to wake. The neural activity increases. The electrical rhythms speed up. The eye on that side opens or begins to open. The hemisphere that has been awake begins to slow. The neural activity decreases. The eye on that side closes or begins to close. The whale continues breathing. The whale continues drifting. The switch happens smoothly, practiced over a lifetime, over millions of years of evolution. The whale does not stumble. The whale does not lose awareness. One hemisphere fades as the other brightens. The whale continues. The ocean is never silent. Water conducts sound efficiently. Sounds travel far, bend around obstacles, reflect off layers of water with different temperatures and salinities. The ocean is full of noise. The clicks and whistles of dolphins, the songs of humpback whales, the low rumbles of blue whales and fin whales, the snapping of shrimp, the groaning of ice, the hum of distant boat engines. The whale, even while resting, hears all of this. The hemisphere that is awake processes these sounds, sorting them, identifying what matters and what does not. A sudden loud noise will wake both hemispheres. A boat approaching too close, an explosion, the sonar ping of a naval vessel. These sounds are not natural. These sounds signal danger, or at least disturbance. The whale responds. Both hemispheres activate. The whale moves, swims away, or dives, or surfaces, depending on the threat. The rest is interrupted. The whale returns to full alertness, temporarily, until the danger passes. But most sounds are familiar. The whale has heard them before. The whale recognizes the patterns. The sound of another whale breathing at the surface. The sound of waves. The sound of rain hitting the water. These sounds do not wake the resting hemisphere. These sounds are part of the environment, expected, safe. The hemisphere that is awake notes them, files them away as background, and continues monitoring for anything unusual. Whales communicate with each other across distances. A whale resting alone in the open ocean can hear the calls of other whales tens of kilometers away. These calls carry information, identity, location, emotional state perhaps, intent maybe. The whale resting does not respond to every call. The whale listens, the waking hemisphere processing the sounds, but the whale does not necessarily act. The call might be from a whale too far away to matter. The call might be from a whale moving in a different direction. The whale notes the call, understands that another whale is out there, and continues resting. But if the call is from a nearby whale, from a family member, from a calf, the whale responds. The resting hemisphere may wake fully. The whale may vocalize in return, producing its own call, announcing its presence, maintaining contact. The whale may begin to swim, moving toward the source of the call. Rest is flexible. Rest can be interrupted. Rest is not a deep pit from which the whale cannot emerge. Rest is a state that the whale enters and exits smoothly, as needed. In some species, whales seem to rest more at night. Researchers have observed sperm whales resting more during nighttime hours, hanging vertically in the water, motionless, for longer periods than during the day. This makes sense. Sperm whales hunt in the deep ocean, where it is always dark, but their prey, squid, migrate vertically, rising toward the surface at night and descending during the day. The whales follow this pattern, hunting during the day when the squid are deeper, resting at night when the squid are shallower and perhaps harder to catch efficiently. But day and night matter less in the ocean than they do on land. Light fades quickly with depth. A whale 50 meters below the surface is already in dim light. A whale 200 meters below the surface is in near darkness, even at noon. The whale's schedule is not driven by the sun in the same way that a land animal's schedule is. The whale's schedule is driven by prey, by social interactions, by migration, by factors that do not always align with the rising and setting of the sun. Some whales rest during the day. Some whales rest at night. Some whales rest whenever they are tired, whenever they have finished feeding, whenever the opportunity arises. The pattern varies by species, by location, by individual. There is no single answer to when whales sleep. The answer is always, and never, and in between. Calves rest more than adults. A young whale is growing rapidly. Growth requires energy, and rest conserves energy. The calf surfaces more often than an adult, breathes more often, tires more easily. The calf rests frequently, pressed against the mother, one hemisphere at a time, learning the rhythm of rest and waking that it will follow for the rest of its life. The mother adjusts her activity to accommodate the calf's need for rest. She does not travel as far each day as she would alone. She does not dive as deep. She does not hunt as intensively. She stays with the calf, matching the calf's pace, resting when the calf rests, moving when the calf is ready to move. This continues for months, sometimes years, depending on the species. Gradually, the calf grows stronger. The calf's lungs grow. The calf's muscles grow. The calf can hold its breath longer. The calf can swim faster. The calf rests less frequently. And the mother, gradually, returns to her own rhythm. But even as adults, whales vary in how much they rest. Some individuals seem to rest more than others. Some pods of orcas rest more during certain seasons. Some blue whales rest more after long migrations. The amount of rest a whale needs is not fixed. It changes with circumstances, with age, with health, with the demands placed on the whale's body. A sick whale or an injured whale may rest more or may rest less. If the injury or illness makes swimming difficult, the whale may need to rest more, conserving energy, allowing the body to heal. But if the injury or illness affects breathing, affects the whale's ability to surface efficiently, the whale may rest less, may remain more active, more alert, afraid to let go even partly for fear of sinking, of drowning. Whales can drown. If a whale is too weak to surface, if a whale is trapped underwater, if a whale is injured in a way that prevents surfacing, the whale will drown. It will suffocate just as you would. The whale needs air. The whale needs oxygen. Without it, the whale dies. And so the whale, even while resting, must remain aware of the surface, must remain capable of rising, of breathing. The hemisphere that is awake carries this burden. It monitors the body, the position, the oxygen, always ready to initiate the rise to the surface. Old whales rest differently than young whales. As a whale ages, its body changes. The muscles weaken. The blubber thins. The organs wear. An old whale cannot swim as fast as a young whale. An old whale cannot dive as deep. An old whale tires more easily. And so an old whale rests more, or rests more carefully, conserving energy, avoiding exertion. The old whale's rest is still unihemispheric. The old whale still breathes consciously. But the old whale may rest for longer periods, may move more slowly, may spend more time drifting at the surface. Eventually, every whale dies. Some die from disease. Some die from injury. Some die from starvation, unable to find enough food to sustain their enormous bodies. Some die from old age, their bodies simply wearing out. When a whale dies, it sinks, usually. The body, no longer buoyant with air in the lungs, descends through the water column, down into the deep ocean, down to the seafloor. This is called a whale fall. The body becomes food for deep-sea scavengers, for hagfish and crabs and bacteria. The whale's death sustains an entire ecosystem for months or years, until the body is consumed entirely. But some dead whales float. If the body has enough blubber, enough fat, it may remain buoyant even without air in the lungs. The body floats at the surface or just below, drifting with currents. Scavengers feed on the floating carcass: sharks, seabirds, fish. Eventually, decomposition gases build up inside the body, and the carcass swells, becoming even more buoyant. Later, the gases escape, or the body decomposes enough that it loses buoyancy and the carcass sinks. But for a time, the dead whale drifts, a temporary island of flesh in the open ocean. Living whales sometimes approach dead whales. They swim near the carcass. They circle it or touch it gently with their flippers or noses. This behavior has been observed in several species. Researchers are unsure what it means. Perhaps the living whale recognizes the dead one as kin. Perhaps the living whale is curious. Perhaps the living whale is disturbed by the presence of death, by the stillness of a body that should be moving. Whales are social animals. Whales recognize each other. The death of a whale, especially a family member, may affect other whales in ways we do not fully understand. But the living whale, after a time, moves on. The living whale cannot linger. The living whale must continue breathing, must continue surfacing, must continue living. The dead whale is left behind. The ocean takes it. And the living whale returns to its rhythm, swimming and resting, resting and swimming, one hemisphere at a time. The blubber layer beneath a whale's skin is thick. In some species, it can be 30 centimeters thick or more. This blubber is fat, rich in energy, insulating the whale from the cold water. But blubber is also buoyant. Fat floats. A whale with thick blubber is more buoyant than a whale with thin blubber. A well-fed whale, carrying plenty of stored energy, floats more easily. A thin whale, depleted, sinks more easily. This affects how the whale rests. A buoyant whale can rest at the surface with less effort. The whale can float, letting the water support its weight, breathing easily, barely moving. A less buoyant whale must work harder to stay near the surface. The whale must swim slightly, must adjust its position constantly, must use energy to avoid sinking too deep between breaths. And so the amount of blubber a whale carries affects not only its energy reserves, but also its ability to rest efficiently. During feeding season, whales gain weight. They consume enormous quantities of food. A blue whale feeding on krill can eat several tons of krill per day. The whale's stomach stretches. The whale's body stores the energy as fat, as blubber. The whale grows rounder, heavier, more buoyant. During this time, the whale rests easily. The whale has plenty of energy. The whale does not need to conserve as carefully. The whale can afford to rest more, to move less, to simply float and breathe, and let the body recover from the work of feeding. During migration, or during breeding season, when many whales fast, the whale loses weight. The blubber layer thins. The whale becomes less buoyant. The whale must work harder to rest. The whale must move more to maintain position. The whale's rest becomes less efficient. The whale loses more energy even while resting. This is part of the cost of fasting, part of the cost of migration. The whale pays this cost willingly, or at least inevitably, driven by biology, by the need to breed, by the cycle of seasons. The skin of a whale is smooth, but not perfectly smooth. Whales accumulate barnacles, algae, and small parasites on their skin. Barnacles attach themselves to the whale's body, especially on slow-moving species like right whales and grey whales. These barnacles are hard, rough, adding drag when the whale swims. But the whale cannot remove them easily. The whale may breach, leaping out of the water and crashing back down, perhaps to dislodge parasites. But this is effortful, costly. The whale tolerates the barnacles, the algae, the small passengers that hitch a ride on its enormous body. During rest, the whale is not grooming itself. The whale is not scratching at parasites. The whale is simply resting, one hemisphere at a time, conserving energy. The parasites remain. The barnacles remain. They are part of the whale's existence, neither helping nor significantly harming, just present. Some whales rest in kelp forests near the coast. Sea otters do this, wrapping themselves in kelp to avoid drifting away while they sleep. Whales do not wrap themselves in kelp, but grey whales sometimes rest in the calm waters near kelp forests, using the shelter of the coastline to avoid open ocean swells. The kelp itself does not provide safety for an animal as large as a whale. But the shallow coastal waters, the reduced wave action, the proximity to shore, all make for calmer conditions. The whale rests more easily in calm water than in rough water. The whale, when possible, chooses calm places to rest. But often, there is no calm place. The whale is in the open ocean, far from shore, far from shelter. The whale rests anyway. The whale has no choice. The whale's body demands rest, and so the whale rests, even in rough seas, even in exposed waters, even in places where rest is difficult. The whale is adapted for this. The whale's body, the whale's brain, the whale's entire system is built to rest in motion, to rest in the water, to rest without the luxury of safety. Orcas are apex predators. They hunt seals, fish, sharks, even other whales. Orcas are intelligent, social, coordinated hunters. A pod of orcas can take down a grey whale, attacking the young calf, or exhausting an adult over hours of pursuit. Orcas are a threat to other whales, especially smaller species, especially calves. And so whales, when resting, remain alert for orcas. The hemisphere that is awake listens for the distinctive calls of orcas, the high-pitched whistles, the echolocation clicks. If orcas are detected nearby, the whale may wake fully, may flee, may dive, may group with other whales for protection. Rest is interrupted. Survival takes precedence. But orcas also rest. Orcas are whales, or rather, orcas are large dolphins, but they are cetaceans, and they use unihemispheric sleep just like other whales. An orca at rest is both predator and prey, or at least both hunter and potential victim. An orca must remain aware while resting, just like the whales it hunts. The orca's hemisphere that is awake monitors the water, listens for threats, listens for opportunities. The orca is never fully off duty. In some regions, great white sharks hunt whales. Not adult whales, but calves, or juveniles, or weakened adults. A great white shark is large, powerful, armed with rows of serrated teeth. A shark can inflict terrible wounds, can bite through blubber and muscle, can cause a whale to bleed, to weaken, to die. Whales are aware of sharks. The hemisphere that is awake, even during rest, monitors for the presence of sharks. If a shark approaches, the whale responds. The whale may swim away, may position itself to protect its calf, may strike at the shark with its tail. Rest is abandoned. Defense is immediate. But most of the time, there are no orcas nearby. Most of the time, there are no sharks. Most of the time, the ocean is empty of immediate threats. The whale rests. The whale drifts. The whale breathes. The hemisphere that is awake monitors the water, but finds nothing alarming. The whale continues resting. The ocean remains calm. The whale remains safe, for now. Human activities disturb whale rest. Boats create noise, constant engine hum, propeller cavitation, sonar pings. These sounds travel far through the water. A whale resting near a shipping lane hears boats constantly. The hemisphere that is awake must process these sounds, must determine if any of them signal danger, must remain alert even when the sounds are repetitive, non-threatening, but ever-present. This is exhausting, or at least it prevents the whale from resting as deeply as it might in quiet water. Research vessels sometimes approach whales to study them. Researchers want to measure the whale, photograph the whale, tag the whale with tracking devices. The researchers try to minimize disturbance, but the whale notices anyway. The whale hears the boat. The whale sees the boat. The whale may alter its behavior, may swim away, may dive, may interrupt its rest to avoid the boat. The data collected helps scientists understand whales, helps inform conservation efforts, but the cost is borne by the whale, in interrupted rest, in increased vigilance, in stress. Noise pollution in the ocean has increased dramatically over the past century. Before the industrial era, the ocean was quieter. The loudest sounds were natural: whale calls, storms, earthquakes, volcanic activity. Now, the ocean is filled with human-generated noise. Ship traffic, sonar, seismic surveys for oil and gas, construction, military exercises. These sounds are often loud, often low frequency, the same frequencies that whales use for communication. The noise masks whale calls, makes it harder for whales to hear each other, forces whales to call louder or more frequently to be heard. And the noise makes it harder for whales to rest, because the hemisphere that is awake must remain alert to these unfamiliar, unsettling sounds. Some regions are noisier than others. Coastal areas with heavy shipping traffic are very noisy. Deep ocean basins, far from shipping lanes, are quieter. Whales that rest in noisy areas may rest less well than whales in quiet areas. Researchers have found correlations between noise levels and whale stress hormones. Whales exposed to chronic noise show elevated stress hormones in their blubber, suggesting that the noise affects them physiologically, not just behaviorally. Climate change is altering the ocean. Water temperatures are rising. Ocean currents are shifting. Ice is melting. These changes affect where whales can feed, where whales migrate, when whales breed. A whale that has followed the same migration route for decades may find that the route no longer leads to food, that the prey has moved, that the water is too warm or too acidic or too depleted. The whale must adapt, must find new feeding grounds, must adjust its behavior. And this adaptation requires energy, requires thought, requires the hemisphere that is awake to process new information, to make new decisions. Rest may suffer. The whale may rest less because it is searching for food, because it is uncertain, because the environment is changing faster than the whale can easily adapt. But despite all these challenges, whales continue to rest. Whales continue to divide their consciousness, one hemisphere at a time, and find moments of quiet in the ocean. The whale system is robust. The whale has survived for millions of years. The whale has adapted to ice ages, to warm periods, to predators, to competition, to everything the ocean has thrown at it. Human impacts are significant, but the whale is not fragile. The whale is resilient. The whale rests and breathes and continues. Researchers studying whale sleep face many challenges. Whales are large. Whales are mobile. Whales live in an environment where humans cannot easily follow. You cannot put a whale in a laboratory. You cannot attach sensors to a whale without disturbing it. You cannot observe a whale continuously for days or weeks without losing track of it. And so the data on whale sleep is incomplete, gathered in fragments, inferred from behavior, extrapolated from studies of smaller cetaceans. What researchers can do is observe whales in the wild. They use drones to film whales from above. They use underwater cameras to film whales from below. They use hydrophones to listen to whales, to record their breathing patterns, their calls, their movements. They use tags, attached briefly to a whale's skin with suction cups, to record depth, temperature, acceleration, sound. These tags stay attached for hours or days, then fall off, and the researchers retrieve them, or them. Data is transmitted remotely. From these fragments of data, researchers build a picture of how whales rest. The picture is incomplete, but it is growing clearer. Whales rest near the surface, or deeper in the water column. Whales rest while drifting, or while swimming slowly. Whales rest one hemisphere at a time, with one eye open, one eye closed. Whales rest for minutes or hours at a time, then switch hemispheres. Whales rest more after active periods, less during feeding or migration. Whales rest differently depending on species, age, location, season. The details vary, but the pattern is consistent. The whale never fully shuts down. The whale always remains partly aware. This awareness is not the same as human awareness. The whale is not thinking about the past or the future. The whale is not worrying about whether it will find food tomorrow, or whether the migration will go smoothly, or whether the calf will survive. The whale is aware of now. The whale is aware of the water, the light, the need to breathe. The awareness is immediate, sensory, direct. The whale does not analyze its awareness. The whale simply is aware. Philosophers sometimes ask what it is like to be a bat, imagining the experience of navigating by echolocation, of hanging upside down, of living nocturnally. The question is unanswerable because we cannot be bats, cannot experience the world as a bat does. The same question applies to whales. What is it like to be a whale? What is it like to rest one hemisphere at a time? What is it like to never fully sleep? We cannot know. We can only observe and infer and imagine carefully. But we can say this: the whale is not suffering. The whale is not exhausted. The whale is not longing for deeper rest. The whale's rest is sufficient for the whale. The whale's brain recovers. The whale's body recovers. The whale wakes, or half wakes, and continues living. The system works. It has worked for 50 million years. It will continue working as long as whales survive. The whale's rest is not inferior to your rest. It is not incomplete or inadequate. It is different. It is adapted to a different environment, a different body, a different set of constraints. You rest deeply because you can. You sleep with both hemispheres because you are on land, because you breathe automatically, because you are safe in your bed. The whale rests lightly because it must. The whale sleeps one hemisphere at a time because it is in water, because it breathes consciously, because it is never entirely safe. Both systems work. Both systems allow the animal to recover, to survive, to thrive. There is beauty in this, in the way evolution has solved the problem of rest in the ocean. The whale's brain has divided itself, has learned to let one half rest while the other watches. The whale's body has adapted to hold breath, to store oxygen, to dive and surface efficiently. The whale's behavior has adapted to rest while moving, to rest in the open, to rest without shelter. Every part of the system fits together. Every part supports the whole. The whale is a living solution to the problem of being a mammal in the ocean. And so the whale drifts, or swims, slowly near the surface of the water. One eye is open, watching the faint light from above. One eye is closed, resting. One hemisphere is in slow wave sleep, neurons firing slowly, recovering. One hemisphere is alert, processing the sounds of the ocean, the position of the body, the slow build of carbon dioxide that signals the need to breathe. The whale is at rest. The whale is awake. The whale is both. The whale is neither. The whale simply is. The ocean moves around the whale. Currents flow, gentle or strong. The water is cold or warm, depending on location. The water is clear or murky, depending on depth and season. The water carries sound from distant sources, whale calls and boat engines, and the creak of ice. The whale hears it all, the hemisphere that is awake, filtering the sounds, noting what matters, ignoring what does not. The ocean is the whale's entire world. The whale knows nothing else. The whale needs nothing else. Time passes. The resting hemisphere begins to wake. The transition is smooth, gradual. The neural activity increases. The eye opens slightly, begins to see. The waking hemisphere begins to slow. The neural activity decreases. The eye closes slightly, begins to rest. The whale continues breathing. The whale continues drifting. The transition completes. The hemispheres have switched. The whale continues. How many times has this whale switched hemispheres? Thousands of times. Tens of thousands. Hundreds of thousands over the course of a long life. The whale does not count. The whale does not remember each switch. The whale simply does it, again and again. A rhythm as natural as breathing, as fundamental as the heartbeat. The whale has been doing this since birth. The whale will do this until death. This is what it means to be a whale. Other whales are nearby, perhaps. The whale hears their breathing, their calls. The whale is part of a larger group, a pod, a population. The whales share the water, share the ocean. But each whale rests individually. Each whale manages its own consciousness, its own hemispheres, its own breathing. The whales do not coordinate their rest, except in the loose way that mothers and calves coordinate, or the way that pods of orcas rest together for safety. But each whale is responsible for itself. Each whale monitors its own body, its own needs, its own survival. The whale surfaces. The blowhole breaks the surface. The whale exhales, a mist of vapor rising into the air. The whale inhales, filling its lungs. The blowhole closes. The whale sinks back down. The entire sequence takes seconds. The whale does not linger at the surface. The whale does not rest at the surface longer than necessary. The whale breathes and descends, returning to the depth where it was resting, where it feels comfortable, where it can drift without effort. The hemisphere that is awake counted the time since the last breath. Not consciously, not in numbers, but in the accumulation of signals from the body. The carbon dioxide building in the blood, the slight discomfort, the slight urge. When the urge reached a threshold, the hemisphere initiated the rise. The whale surfaced, the whale breathed. The urge faded. The hemisphere resumed its quiet monitoring. The whale resumed its rest. This cycle repeats. Breathing is not a constant interruption. The whale can rest for minutes between breaths, depending on its oxygen stores, its metabolic rate, its level of activity. A resting whale breathes less often than an active whale. A deep diving whale, after surfacing from a long dive, breathes rapidly for several minutes, filling its oxygen stores, preparing for the next dive. But a whale at rest, drifting near the surface, breathes slowly, calmly, without hurry. The whale does not think about breathing the way you might think about it if you decided to hold your breath. The whale is not actively trying not to breathe. The whale is simply waiting until breathing is necessary. The waiting is not effortful. The waiting is the default state. The whale rests, and when the body signals the need, the whale surfaces. There is no conflict, no struggle. The system works smoothly. The water around the whale is full of life, though much of it is invisible to the whale during rest. Plankton drift in the currents, microscopic plants and animals, the base of the ocean food web. Fish swim in schools, darting and turning in coordinated patterns. Squid pulse through the water, tentacles trailing. Jellyfish drift, translucent and boneless. Sharks cruise the depths, searching for prey. The ocean is not empty. The ocean is full. But the whale, at rest, is not hunting. The whale is not feeding. The whale is simply present, part of the ecosystem, but passive, quiet, conserving energy. If the whale is a baleen whale, it does not hunt individual prey. It filters. When feeding, the whale swims through dense patches of krill or small fish with its mouth open. Water flows through the baleen plates, long fringed structures that hang from the whale's upper jaw. The prey is trapped by the baleen. The water flows out. The whale closes its mouth and swallows. The whale repeats this over and over, consuming tons of prey in a feeding session. But during rest, the whale does not feed. The mouth stays closed. The baleen is unused. The whale drifts, conserving energy, waiting until it is ready to feed again. If the whale is a toothed whale, like a sperm whale, it hunts individual prey. The whale dives deep into the dark, using echolocation to find squid. The whale produces clicks, loud and rapid, scanning the water. When the whale detects prey, the whale accelerates, closes the distance, opens its mouth, and snaps the squid up with its teeth. The whale does not chew. The whale swallows the squid whole. The whale continues hunting, diving repeatedly until it has eaten enough. Then the whale rests, near the surface, recovering from the exertion of deep diving, allowing its body to process the food, allowing its muscles to replenish oxygen stores. But during rest, the toothed whale does not hunt. The whale does not echolocate intensively. The whale produces occasional clicks, quiet and slow, just enough to maintain awareness of its surroundings. The whale's focus is inward, on rest, on recovery. The prey are out there, in the deep, but the whale will hunt them later. Now, the whale rests. The whale's stomach is large. A blue whale's stomach can hold nearly a ton of food. The whale does not eat small meals frequently. The whale eats large meals infrequently. When food is available, the whale gorges, consuming as much as it can while the opportunity lasts. When food is not available, the whale fasts, living off stored fat. This feast or famine pattern is common in animals that feed on unpredictable or seasonal resources. The whale is adapted for it. The whale's body stores energy efficiently. The whale's metabolism slows during fasting. The whale survives. After a large meal, the whale's body works to digest the food. The stomach churns. Enzymes break down proteins and fats. Nutrients are absorbed through the intestinal walls into the bloodstream. This process requires energy, requires blood flow to the digestive system. A whale that has just fed may rest more, allowing the body to focus on digestion rather than movement. The whale drifts or swims slowly, one hemisphere at a time resting, while the body processes the meal. Digestion generates heat. The breakdown of food releases energy, some of which becomes heat. In a cold ocean, this heat is welcome. The whale's body temperature is regulated, maintained at a constant level despite the cold water. The heat from digestion helps. The heat from muscle activity helps. The blubber layer insulates, trapping heat inside the body. The whale remains warm even in near-freezing water, even while resting and generating minimal heat from movement. The whale's kidneys filter the blood, removing waste products, maintaining the balance of salts and water. Whales drink seawater, or they do not drink at all, depending on the species. Marine mammals have kidneys that can produce very concentrated urine, excreting excess salt while retaining water. The whale's body maintains its internal salt balance despite living in salty water, despite eating salty prey. This is another adaptation, another part of the system that allows the whale to live in the ocean. During rest, the whale's kidneys continue working, quietly, constantly, filtering and excreting. The whale does not think about this. The whale does not feel its kidneys working. The whale's body handles it automatically, controlled by hormones, by feedback loops, by systems that evolved long ago. The whale simply rests, and the body takes care of itself, as much as a body can without full unconsciousness. The whale's heart beats slowly, rhythmically. The blood circulates, carrying oxygen from the lungs to the tissues, carrying carbon dioxide from the tissues back to the lungs. The blood also carries nutrients from the digestive system to the muscles, the brain, the blubber, everywhere the body needs energy. The blood carries hormones, chemical signals that coordinate the body's functions. The blood carries immune cells, defending against infection, repairing damage. The blood is the whale's transport system, and it never stops flowing. Even during rest, the heart beats. Even with one hemisphere asleep, the heart beats. The heart does not need conscious control. The heart is controlled by the autonomic nervous system, the part of the nervous system that manages involuntary functions. But the hemisphere that is awake still monitors the heart, indirectly, through signals about blood pressure, oxygen levels, carbon dioxide levels. If something goes wrong, if the heart beats too slowly or too fast, if the blood pressure drops, the whale can respond. But normally, the heart simply beats and the whale rests. The whale's skin is constantly exposed to water, to salt, to cold, to pressure. The skin is thick, tough, resilient. The outer layer of skin cells is constantly shed and replaced. The whale does not molt like a seal or a bird. The whale sheds skin cells continuously, losing tiny flakes into the water. These flakes become part of the ocean's organic matter, food for bacteria, part of the cycle of life. Beneath the skin is the blubber, the fat layer. Beneath the blubber are the muscles, enormous slabs of tissue that power the whale's movements. Beneath the muscles are the bones, lightweight and porous compared to land mammal bones, adapted for life in water where weight is less of an issue. Inside the bones is marrow, producing blood cells. Every part of the whale's body is working, always, even during rest. Cells are dividing, proteins are being synthesized, waste products are being broken down. Life continues at the cellular level, even when the whale is at its most quiet. The whale's immune system is active, always. Viruses and bacteria are present in the ocean. Parasites attach to the whale's skin. Wounds can become infected. The whale's immune system defends against these threats. White blood cells patrol the blood and tissues, identifying and destroying invaders. Antibodies bind to pathogens, marking them for destruction. The whale's body heals wounds, slowly, sealing cuts, regrowing tissue. During rest, the immune system may work more efficiently, as the body's energy is not divided between movement and defense. Rest supports immune function. Rest supports healing. But the whale does not rest to heal consciously. The whale rests because it is tired, because the body demands rest, because the brain needs to recover. The healing is a side effect, a benefit, one of many reasons that rest is necessary. Whale does not think about immune function or cellular repair. The whale simply rests, and the body does what bodies do, maintaining itself, repairing itself, continuing to function. The whale's bones contain records of its life. Growth rings, like tree rings, mark the passage of years. Chemical signatures in the bone tissue record what the whale ate, where the whale traveled, how the environment changed over the whale's lifetime. After death, if researchers recover the whale's bones, they can read this history. They can estimate the whale's age. They can trace its migrations. They can understand something of what the whale experienced. But the living whale carries no awareness of this record. The whale does not remember its past in the way you remember yours. The whale exists in the present, shaped by the past, but not consciously reflecting on it. Memory in whales is complex. Whales recognize each other. Whales return to the same feeding grounds year after year. Whales follow migration routes that their mothers followed, that their grandmothers followed. This requires memory. This requires the ability to retain information over months or years, to recall locations, to recognize individuals. But how memory works in a whale that sleeps one hemisphere at a time is not fully understood. In humans, memory consolidation occurs during sleep, particularly during certain stages of sleep. The brain replays experiences, strengthens certain neural connections, weakens others. Memories are moved from short-term storage to long-term storage. If humans are deprived of sleep, memory suffers. But whales do not sleep the way humans do. Whales do not cycle through the same stages. Does memory consolidation happen in the sleeping hemisphere while the other remains awake? Does it happen in both hemispheres, but at different times? Does it happen differently than in humans, through different mechanisms? The answers are not clear. What is clear is that whales remember. A whale recognizes its calf, even after months of separation. A whale returns to a feeding ground it visited the previous year. A whale recognizes the call of a family member, even across miles of ocean. Memory functions. Memory persists. The whale's brain, divided during rest, still maintains continuity over time. The whale is the same individual today that it was yesterday and will be tomorrow. The self persists, even though the consciousness is divided. The concept of self in whales is difficult to explore. Humans have a strong sense of self, a continuous narrative identity, an I that persists through time. Whales may have something similar or something entirely different. Whales recognize themselves in mirrors, at least some species do, suggesting some form of self-awareness. But self-awareness in a brain that rests one hemisphere at a time may be structured differently than in a brain that rests as a whole. Does the resting hemisphere lose awareness of self? Does the waking hemisphere maintain the whale's identity alone? Or does identity persist in both hemispheres, even when one is asleep? These questions are philosophical as much as scientific. We cannot ask the whale. We can only observe behavior, measure brain activity, and infer carefully. But for the whale, these questions do not exist. The whale does not wonder about identity or consciousness. The whale simply is. The whale rests. The whale wakes. The whale continues being itself, without doubt, without question. There is no existential crisis in the ocean. There is only existence. The ocean's surface moves with the wind. Small ripples, large swells, breaking waves. The whale at the surface feels this motion. The whale rises and falls with the swells, the body moving smoothly over the contours of the water. The movement is gentle, usually. Even in rough seas, the whale is adapted for movement. The whale's body is streamlined, shaped to slip through water with minimal resistance. The whale's weight is supported by the water. The whale does not tire from simply being at the surface. The whale floats, drifts, rises with the swells, and sinks into the troughs, all while resting. But the surface is not always the most restful place. The surface is exposed. The surface is where boats travel. The surface is where predators can see from above. Some whales rest deeper, below the surface, in the dim water where they are less visible, less vulnerable. These whales rise to breathe, then sink back down, spending most of their rest time submerged, out of sight. The depth at which a whale rests varies with the species and the situation. A coastal whale might rest in water only 10 or 20 meters deep, close to the seafloor, close to shore. A pelagic whale, a whale of the open ocean, might rest hundreds of meters down, suspended in the water column, far from any solid surface. The whale chooses its depth based on comfort, safety, buoyancy. The whale adjusts as needed. Pressure at depth does not bother the whale. The whale's body is mostly water, like the ocean itself. Water is incompressible. Pressure does not crush the whale. The whale's lungs collapse under pressure, but this is expected, normal. The whale's other organs are unaffected. The whale can rest at depth as easily as at the surface, as long as it can return to the surface to breathe before oxygen runs out. But staying deep while resting means longer gaps between breaths. The whale must surface less often, because traveling from depth to surface and back takes time, takes energy. A whale resting at 200 meters might surface only every 15 or 20 minutes. The hemisphere that is awake monitors the oxygen, monitors the time, initiates the rise when necessary. The whale ascends, smoothly, not hurrying, just rising steadily toward the light. The whale reaches the surface, breathes, and descends again. The pattern continues. Light penetrates water, but not far. Red light is absorbed first, within the top few meters. Orange light, yellow light, green light. Each is absorbed in turn as depth increases. Blue light penetrates deepest, reaching down to perhaps 200 meters in clear water. Below that, there is no sunlight, only darkness. But the darkness is not absolute. There is bioluminescence, the light produced by living organisms. Bacteria, jellyfish, squid, fish. Many deep-sea creatures produce light through chemical reactions in their bodies. The light is faint, usually blue or green, flickering or glowing steadily. The deep ocean is full of these tiny lights, like stars in a black sky. A whale resting at depth might see bioluminescence. The hemisphere that is awake, the eye that is open, might register these faint glows. The whale does not react to each one. The whale has seen bioluminescence countless times. The whale knows that most of these lights are harmless, just small creatures moving through the water. The whale notes them and continues resting. Only if the lights cluster, if they move in a pattern that suggests a large animal, a predator or a competitor, does the whale pay closer attention. The whale's eye is adapted for low light. The retina contains many rod cells, which detect light intensity but not color. The whale's vision underwater is better than human vision underwater, but it is still limited by the available light. At depth, where light is scarce, the whale relies more on hearing, on echolocation, than on vision. But the eye is still useful. The eye still watches. The hemisphere that is awake still processes what the eye sees, even if the images are dim, blurry, incomplete. When the whale surfaces, the eye sees the bright world above the water. The eye sees the sky if it is daytime. The eye sees stars if it is nighttime and the sky is clear. The eye sees clouds, rain, the sun, the moon. The whale's eye must adjust to these changes in brightness, from the dim underwater world to the bright surface world. The pupil contracts in bright light, expands in dim light. The adjustment is automatic, rapid. The whale does not think about it. The whale simply sees. But the whale does not see the way you see. The whale's brain processes visual information differently. The whale's eyes are on the sides of its head, giving a wide field of view but limited binocular vision. The whale sees different things with each eye, and the brain must integrate these separate images. During unihemispheric sleep, with one eye closed and one hemisphere resting, the visual processing is further divided. The waking hemisphere processes input from one eye only. The resting hemisphere processes nothing. The whale's visual world is literally split, half and half, during rest. This might seem disorienting, but the whale is not disoriented. The whale is built for this. The whale's brain has always worked this way. There is no comparison to a different way of seeing. The whale sees with one eye during rest, and this is sufficient. The whale knows where the surface is, where other whales are, whether anything threatening is nearby. The whale's awareness, though divided, is adequate. Sound is more important to the whale than sight, even when both eyes are open. Sound travels faster in water than in air, about 4 times faster. Sound travels farther. Sound bends around obstacles. Sound reveals the shape of the environment in ways that sight cannot, especially in dark or murky water. The whale's ears are adapted for underwater hearing. The whale's brain is highly developed for processing complex sounds. The whale lives in a world of sound, and rest does not change this. The hemisphere that is awake continues to listen. The whale hears the low-frequency rumbles of distant whales, calls that travel hundreds of kilometers through the ocean. The whale hears the higher-frequency clicks of nearby dolphins, chattering and echolocating. The whale hears the snapping of shrimp, the scraping of fish feeding on coral, the groaning of ice in polar regions. The whale hears the sounds of the ocean itself, the movement of water, the crash of distant waves, the hum of currents. All of this information flows into the waking hemisphere, is processed, is sorted, is filed away as relevant or irrelevant. The resting hemisphere hears nothing, or hears only faintly. The auditory cortex in the resting hemisphere has quieted. The neurons that process sound have slowed their activity. The ear still functions, the sound still enters, but the brain is not paying attention. The sounds pass through without registering, without being remembered, without affecting the whale's behavior. The resting hemisphere is offline, and this includes its hearing. But if a loud sound occurs, both hemispheres can activate quickly. A sudden explosion, a boat passing very close, the call of an orca. These sounds can wake the resting hemisphere. The whale responds as a whole, both eyes open, both hemispheres alert. The whale assesses the threat, decides how to respond, and acts. Only after the threat has passed does the whale return to rest, one hemisphere at a time. The whale's sense of touch is present across its entire body. The skin contains nerve endings that detect pressure, temperature, pain. The whale feels the water flowing over its skin. The whale feels the touch of another whale, the brush of a flipper, the contact of a calf nursing. The whale feels injury, feels the bite of a predator, the scrape of barnacles, the sting of a jellyfish. Touch is immediate, visceral, always present. During rest, the sense of touch remains active. The hemisphere that is awake processes tactile information from across the body. The whale feels the water's temperature, the water's pressure, the water's movement. The whale adjusts its position based on these sensations, shifting slightly to remain comfortable, to remain stable. The whale does not think about these adjustments consciously. The adjustments happen automatically, guided by the waking hemisphere, by the sensory feedback, by the body's own wisdom. The whale's flippers are particularly sensitive. The flippers contain many nerve endings, concentrated especially along the leading edges. The whale uses its flippers to steer, to stabilize, to communicate. A mother whale touches her calf with her flipper, gentle and reassuring. A male whale might touch a female during courtship, or whales might touch each other during social interactions, establishing bonds, reinforcing relationships. Touch is a language in itself, a way of communicating that does not require sound. But during rest, the whale's flippers are mostly still. The whale is not steering actively, not interacting socially. The flippers hang at the whale's sides or extend slightly for balance. The whale feels the water moving past the flippers, feels the pressure, but does not respond unless necessary. The whale is conserving energy, minimizing movement, allowing the body to rest as much as possible while still remaining aware. The whale's tail, the fluke, is the whale's primary means of propulsion. The tail moves up and down, unlike a fish's tail, which moves side to side. The powerful muscles in the whale's back and tail drive this movement, generating thrust, pushing the whale through the water. When the whale is swimming actively, the tail beats steadily, rhythmically, propelling the whale at speeds that can exceed 30 kilometers per hour in some species. But during rest, the tail barely moves. The whale drifts or swims very slowly, with only occasional, gentle tail movements to maintain position or adjust course. The muscles in the tail relax. The energy demand decreases. The whale's metabolism slows slightly. The whale is in a low-power state, not shut down, but idling, maintaining basic functions while conserving resources. The whale's blowhole, the nostril on top of its head, remains closed except when breathing. The muscles around the blowhole are strong, keeping it sealed against the water pressure. When the whale surfaces, the whale consciously relaxes these muscles. The blowhole opens. The whale exhales forcefully, clearing any water from the nasal passages, expelling the old air. The exhalation is visible as a spout, a spray of water vapor and mucus that rises above the whale's head. Each species of whale has a distinctive spout shape and size, recognizable to experienced observers. A blue whale's spout can reach 9 meters high. A gray whale's spout is short and bushy. Researchers identify whale species by their spouts, observing from boats or shore. After exhaling, the whale inhales, rapidly, filling the lungs in just a second or two. The inhalation is quiet, or nearly so, a rush of air into the body. Then the blowhole closes again. The whale dives or remains at the surface for another breath, depending on its needs. The entire breathing sequence is quick, efficient, practiced. The whale does this thousands of times per day, every day of its life. The whale's sense of smell is limited. The olfactory structures in the brain are small or absent in most whale species. Toothed whales, like dolphins and sperm whales, have essentially no sense of smell. Baleen whales retain some olfactory ability, but it is much reduced compared to land mammals. In the ocean, smell is less useful than in air. Chemicals diffuse slowly through water. Currents mix and dilute scents. The whale does not hunt by smell. The whale does not recognize others by smell. The whale relies on sound, on sight, on touch, but not on smell. During rest, the absence of smell does not matter. The whale is not seeking food, not seeking mates, not seeking anything that would require olfaction. The whale simply rests, and the senses that matter, hearing and touch especially, remain active enough to keep the whale safe. The whale's sense of taste is present, but not well studied. The whale has taste buds, or structures similar to taste buds, in its mouth and throat. The whale can distinguish between different types of prey, between fresh and spoiled food, between salt water and fresh water. But taste is not a dominant sense. The whale swallows prey whole or in large pieces, without chewing, without lingering over flavors. The whale eats to survive, to obtain energy, not for pleasure in the way humans might eat for pleasure. During rest, the whale is not eating. The mouth is closed. The taste receptors are idle. The whale does not think about food, or if it does, the thought does not dominate. The whale is focused on rest, on recovery, on the simple act of being. The whale's brain consumes energy, even at rest. The brain is metabolically expensive, requiring a constant supply of oxygen and glucose. In humans, the brain accounts for about 20% of the body's total energy use, despite being only 2% of body weight. In whales, the proportion is lower, but the brain is still energy-intensive. During rest, with one hemisphere in slow-wave sleep, the energy consumption decreases slightly. The sleeping hemisphere requires less oxygen, less glucose. But the waking hemisphere continues to function, continues to consume energy at near normal rates. The overall energy savings are modest, but significant over time. This is part of why sleep, or unihemispheric sleep, is necessary. The brain cannot function indefinitely at full capacity. Neurons accumulate waste products, metabolic byproducts that interfere with function. During slow-wave sleep, these waste products are cleared more efficiently. The brain's glymphatic system, a waste clearance system that operates primarily during sleep, flushes out toxins, proteins, and debris. In humans, this clearance is most effective during deep sleep. In whales, the process likely occurs in each hemisphere during its sleep phase. The waking hemisphere does not undergo this deep clearance. The waking hemisphere continues to accumulate waste products, but at a slower rate than if the whale were fully active. When the hemispheres switch, the previously waking hemisphere finally gets its turn to rest, to clear its wastes, to recover. The system is balanced. Each hemisphere gets equal time to rest, equal opportunity to recover. The whale as a whole remains functional, always. The whale's muscles also benefit from rest. Muscles work by contracting and relaxing, powered by chemical reactions that consume oxygen and glucose and produce waste products like lactic acid. During intense activity, muscles can accumulate lactic acid faster than it can be removed, leading to fatigue, to soreness. During rest, blood flow to the muscles continues, carrying away lactic acid, delivering fresh oxygen and nutrients, allowing the muscles to recover. A whale that has been swimming hard, diving deep, hunting actively, will have tired muscles. The whale needs rest to allow these muscles to recover. The whale's rest, even while drifting or swimming slowly, provides this opportunity. The muscles are not working hard. The metabolic demand is low. The waste products are cleared. The muscles repair minor damage, tiny tears in fibers, routine wear. The whale's body maintains itself, prepares for the next period of activity. The whale's bones, unlike human bones, do not bear the whale's weight. The water supports the whale. The whale does not walk or stand. The whale's skeleton is adapted for swimming, for flexibility, for streamlining. The bones are lighter, less dense than land mammal bones. The bones contain less calcium, more oil. This makes the bones more flexible, less brittle. The whale's spine can bend, allowing the powerful up and down motion of the tail. The whale's ribs can compress, allowing the lungs to collapse under pressure during deep dives. During rest, the whale's bones are not under unusual stress. The whale is not diving to extreme depths, not swimming at high speeds. The bones simply exist, providing structure, attachment points for muscles, protection for organs. The bones do not rest, exactly, but they are not being challenged. The whale's body is in a low-stress state, and this includes the skeleton. The whale's reproductive system is mostly inactive during rest. Whales breed seasonally, usually. The timing varies by species, but many whales mate in tropical waters during winter months, then travel to polar waters to feed during summer. The females give birth the following winter, after a gestation period of about a year. During the breeding season, males and females are focused on courtship, mating, competition for mates. Hormones drive behavior. Activity levels are high. Rest may be less frequent, less deep. But outside the breeding season, the reproductive system is quiescent. The hormones are at low levels. The drive to mate is absent or minimal. The whale focuses on feeding, on migrating, on resting. The reproductive organs are present, but not active. The whale's body conserves energy, not investing in reproduction when it is not the right time. During rest, a pregnant whale carries her developing calf inside her. The calf grows slowly at first, then more rapidly as the pregnancy progresses. The mother's body provides everything the calf needs: oxygen through the placenta, nutrients from the mother's blood, warmth, protection. The mother's metabolism increases during pregnancy, requiring more food, more energy. The mother's rest may be more frequent, more necessary, as her body works to sustain both herself and the growing calf. But the mother does not rest differently in terms of brain structure. The mother still uses unihemispheric sleep. The mother still breathes consciously. The mother still surfaces regularly. Pregnancy does not change the fundamental pattern of rest. Pregnancy adds to the mother's energy demands, but the way the mother manages rest remains the same. When the calf is born, it is born tail first, usually to prevent drowning. The newborn calf must surface immediately to breathe. The mother assists, nudging the calf upward if necessary, positioning herself beneath the calf to help it reach the air. The calf takes its first breath, fills its lungs for the first time, and begins the lifelong pattern of conscious breathing. The calf must learn to swim, to surface, to breathe, all within minutes of being born. There is no grace period. The ocean demands immediate competence. The mother nurses the calf, providing milk that is extremely rich in fat. Whale milk can be 30 to 50% fat, compared to about 4% in human milk. This high-fat milk allows the calf to grow rapidly, to build blubber, to gain strength. The mother's mammary glands are internal, hidden beneath the skin. The calf nurses by grasping the mother's nipple with its mouth, and the mother actively pumps milk into the calf's mouth. Nursing happens frequently, especially in the early weeks, and the mother must balance nursing with resting, with traveling, with all the other demands of life. The calf grows quickly. Within months, the calf is much larger, stronger, more capable. The calf continues to nurse for a year or more, depending on the species, while gradually learning to eat solid food, to hunt or filter feed. The mother teaches the calf, or the calf learns by imitation, by trial and error. The bond between mother and calf is strong, lasting for years in some species. The calf eventually becomes independent, but the memory of the mother, the behaviors learned from her, persist throughout the calf's life. And throughout all of this, from birth to independence, the calf rests one hemisphere at a time. The calf's brain is structured for this from the beginning. The calf never knows any other way to rest. To the calf, this is simply sleep. This is simply how rest works. The calf does not question it. The calf simply does it, instinctively, naturally, as part of being alive. The ocean's seasons affect whale behavior. In polar regions, summer brings long days, continuous sunlight, and an explosion of productivity as phytoplankton bloom in the nutrient-rich, well-lit water. Krill feed on the phytoplankton. Fish feed on the krill. Whales feed on both. The feeding season is short but intense. Whales must consume enormous quantities of food during these few months, storing enough energy to sustain them through the rest of the year. During the feeding season, whales rest less. The priority is feeding. The whales are active, searching for prey, diving, filtering or hunting, consuming as much as possible. Rest is brief, squeezed between feeding bouts, just enough to recover slightly before diving again. The whales are driven by the need to accumulate fat, to store energy, to prepare for the lean months ahead. Winter in polar regions brings darkness, cold, and scarcity. The phytoplankton die back. The krill populations decline. The fish disperse or migrate. Food becomes scarce. Many whales leave, migrating toward warmer waters where they will breed, give birth, and fast for months. The migration is long, energy-intensive. The whales swim steadily, day after day, covering vast distances. During migration, the whales rest while swimming, one hemisphere at a time, never stopping for long. In tropical waters, the whales arrive thin, having used much of their stored fat during migration. The tropical waters are warm but relatively unproductive. There is little food for baleen whales. The whales fast, living off their remaining fat reserves. They breed, they give birth, they nurse calves, all while fasting. This is energetically costly. The whales lose more weight. The whales grow thinner. But they survive because they stored enough energy during the brief feeding season. During this fasting period, the whales may rest more. Without the need to search for food, the whales can afford to conserve energy, to minimize activity. The whales drift in warm water, surface slowly to breathe, interact socially but not strenuously. The mothers nurse their calves, which is demanding, but the mothers rest as much as possible between nursing sessions. The whales are patient. The whales wait for the season to change, for the time to migrate back to the feeding grounds. And then the cycle repeats. The whales migrate back to polar waters. The summer arrives. The feeding begins again. The whales gain weight, restore their blubber, prepare for the next migration. The pattern continues year after year, driven by the Earth's tilt, by the changing seasons, by the rhythms of the ocean. Throughout this cycle, the pattern of rest remains constant. The whale always rests one hemisphere at a time. The whale always breathes consciously. The whale never fully shuts down. The seasons change. The whale's location changes. The whale's activity level changes. The whale's body weight changes. But the structure of rest does not change. This is fundamental. This is what it means to be a whale. Some whales do not migrate. Orcas, for example, often remain in the same general region year-round, following prey that does not migrate, or following prey that migrates but stays within the orca's range. These resident orcas have different patterns than migratory whales. The resident orcas feed year-round, though the abundance of prey varies seasonally. The resident orcas rest year-round, not just during fasting periods. The resident orca's rest is less tied to the cycle of feeding and fasting. The resident orcas rest when they are tired, when they have fed sufficiently, when the opportunity arises. But the structure of rest is the same. Resident or migratory, the orcas rest one hemisphere at a time. The orcas breathe consciously. The orcas maintain awareness even during rest. The differences are in timing, in frequency, in context. The mechanism is universal among cetaceans. Whales are individuals. Each whale has its own personality, its own behaviors, its own preferences. Some whales are more social, seeking out the company of others, interacting frequently. Some whales are more solitary, spending much of their time alone, approaching others only during breeding season or when feeding in rich areas brings them together. Some whales are bold, approaching boats, investigating novel objects, taking risks. Some whales are cautious, avoiding boats, fleeing from disturbances, minimizing risk. These individual differences affect how whales rest. A social whale might rest near other whales, taking comfort or security from their presence. A solitary whale might rest alone, far from others, preferring isolation. A bold whale might rest near the surface, visible, unconcerned about exposure. A cautious whale might rest deeper, hidden, minimizing visibility. The pattern of uni-hemispheric sleep is universal, but the details vary from individual to individual. Researchers who study whales over many years learn to recognize individuals. Each whale has unique markings, scars, patterns of pigmentation, shapes of fins and flukes. Researchers photograph these features, catalogue them, track individual whales across years or decades. Some whales have been followed for their entire lives, from calf to adult to old age. These long-term studies reveal how individual whales change over time, how their behavior shifts with age, how they respond to changes in their environment. And these studies show that rest patterns, while consistent in structure, vary in detail. An old whale rests more than it did when young. A whale with a calf rests differently than a whale without a calf. A whale in a noisy environment rests less deeply than a whale in a quiet environment. The whale adapts, within the constraints of its biology, to the circumstances it faces. But the whale cannot choose to sleep differently. The whale cannot decide to shut down both hemispheres, to rest more deeply, to become unconscious. The whale's brain does not allow this. The structure is fixed. The whale can only rest the way it is built to rest, one hemisphere at a time, always partly aware. This is not a choice. This is biology. And so the whale continues. The whale surfaces, breathes, and sinks back down. One eye is open, one eye is closed. One hemisphere is resting, one hemisphere is awake. The whale drifts in the water, weightless, supported by the ocean, moving with the currents. The whale is at rest. The whale is alive. The whale is a mammal in the ocean, adapted for survival in a world that does not forgive unconsciousness. The water is dark or light, depending on depth and time of day. The water is cold or warm, depending on location and season. The water moves or is still, depending on currents and weather. The whale experiences all of this, the hemisphere that is awake, noting the conditions, adjusting as needed, maintaining the balance between rest and alertness. Time passes, though the whale does not count it. Minutes become hours, hours accumulate. The whale continues its slow, steady existence. The whale breathes when necessary. The whale switches hemispheres when necessary. The whale exists, simply and completely, in the present moment. There is no end to this, no final rest for the living whale. The whale will continue this pattern every day for the rest of its life. Decades, perhaps. Some whales live 50 years. Some live 100 years or more. Bowhead whales, the Arctic giants, can live 200 years, making them among the longest-lived mammals on Earth. For all those years, every single day, the whale rests one hemisphere at a time. The whale never fully sleeps. The whale never fully stops. This is not a burden to the whale. This is simply life. The whale knows no alternative. The whale has no concept of sleeping differently. To the whale, this is normal. This is what sleep is. The whale rests and wakes and continues, without complaint, without fatigue that cannot be managed, without longing for deeper rest. The ocean surrounds the whale, vast and deep and ancient. The ocean has been here for billions of years. The ocean will be here long after the whale is gone. The whale is a small part of the ocean's story, a mammal that returned to the sea, that adapted to life in the water, that learned to rest without fully sleeping. The whale is a success, an evolutionary triumph, a creature perfectly suited to its environment. And so the whale rests, one hemisphere at a time, breathing consciously, remaining aware, floating in the water that is its home. The whale is asleep and awake. The whale is resting and alert. The whale is divided and whole. The whale simply is. The water moves gently around the whale's body. The current flows, slow and steady, carrying the whale slightly, imperceptibly, across the ocean. The whale adjusts, a small movement of the tail, a shift of the flippers, maintaining position, maintaining orientation. The hemisphere that is awake monitors these adjustments, makes these tiny corrections, keeps the whale stable. The whale's heart beats, slow, steady, reliable. The blood flows through arteries and veins, carrying oxygen, carrying nutrients, carrying warmth. The lungs rest empty, or nearly so, collapsed, waiting for the next breath. The muscles rest, relaxed, not working, recovering. The brain, one half quiet and the other half alert, continues its divided watch. And far above, beyond the water's surface, beyond the reach of the whale's awareness, the world continues. The sun crosses the sky, or the stars wheel overhead. The wind blows. Clouds form and dissolve. Rain falls onto the ocean's surface, each drop creating a tiny ripple that spreads and fades. The world is full of motion, full of change, full of life. But here, beneath the surface, in the quiet water where the whale rests, there is only the slow rhythm of breathing, the gentle drift of the current, the patient waiting of the resting hemisphere, and the steady vigilance of the waking hemisphere. There is only the whale, existing between sleep and waking, living a life that requires consciousness even in rest, adapted for survival in a world that never stops moving. The whale rests, the whale breathes, the whale continues. This is enough. This is everything. This is what it means to be a whale. And so the whale drifts, as it always has, as it always will, for as long as it lives. One hemisphere resting in the slow rhythms of sleep, one hemisphere watching the water, the light, the need to breathe. The whale surfaces when oxygen calls. The whale sinks back down when the breath is taken. The cycle continues, gentle and unbroken. There is no moment when the whale decides it has rested enough. There is no waking up, feeling refreshed, stretching, beginning the day. There is only the gradual shift from more rest to less rest, from stillness to movement, from quiet observation to active life. The whale does not mark the boundary. The whale simply continues. The hemisphere that was resting begins to wake fully. The eye opens wider. The neural activity increases. The hemisphere that was awake allows itself to rest. The patterns shift smoothly, as they have shifted countless times before. And when both hemispheres have cycled through their rest, when the body has recovered what it needed, the whale becomes more active. The tail begins to beat more strongly. The whale swims with purpose now, not just drifting. The whale may begin to hunt, or to travel, or to interact with others. Life resumes its fuller rhythm, but the rest is never far away. In a few hours, or many hours, the whale will rest again. One hemisphere will quiet, one eye will close, the pattern will repeat. This is not a single story with an ending. This is a cycle that continues every day, every night, every moment of the whale's life. The ocean holds the whale, as it has always held whales, for 50 million years. The water supports this enormous body. The water provides food, carries sound, allows movement in 3 dimensions. The water is home, complete and sufficient. And in this home, the whale has found a way to rest without ever fully letting go, to sleep without ever truly stopping, to remain alive in a world that demands constant awareness. The whale breathes at the surface one more time. The blowhole opens. The breath releases into the air, mist rising and fading. The lungs fill. The blowhole closes. The whale sinks back into the blue, into the quiet, into the half-sleep that sustains it. And there, in that peaceful place between waking and sleeping, between movement and stillness, between awareness and rest, the whale continues its ancient rhythm. One half resting, one half watching, always breathing, always aware, always, in its own way, at peace. The whale needs nothing more than this. The whale knows nothing more than this. The whale is exactly what it needs to be, exactly where it needs to be, resting in the only way it can, living in the only way it knows. And that is enough.